then you got introduced to Lasqueti through John, or?
Yeah. So we headed out. After 2 happy years in Montreal, I found myself all alone in the big house because everyone had gone out to the West Coast. Right? And off I went. And I showed up at, my ex-girlfriend was living out there in a rooming house, so I moved in with her for a few days, and I saw an old friend from New Zealand was out there. I said, I gotta chill out, I need a cabin, I gotta get away from civilization, worn out. And he says, we'll ask John. John, yeah, there's a party at Beach 3 tonight. So here I am in Vancouver. I'd never heard of Stanley Park. It's like a primeval forest, like before man came, right in the middle of the city with trees so tall you can't see the tops and so on. And so many beaches, they got the beaches numbered. So we get down to Beach 3, and there's logs as big as tank cars. I used to live by the tracks in Chicago. You know what a tank car looks like. These logs are like 3-4 tank cars long, and as big as a tank car. You couldn't climb over them. You had to go around to get down the beach. And there's fires. People got fires going on the beach. I just came from out east. They put you in jail for starting a fire on a beach, right? You can't do that. Nobody cared in Vancouver. It was wonderful. So we saw John, met this handsome Canadian guy, and he said, oh yeah, you want to go to Long Beach, that's where you want to go, on Vancouver Island. You can hitchhike and get over there. See ya, and off he went. So the next morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, I hear bam, 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 bam on the door. They open the door, and there's this fella, John. And he's got a tent in his hand. He said, oh, good morning, you're going to need a tent. And he hands me a tent and disappears, right, like that. And leaves me with a tent. So this was the West Coast, People didn't say much, but they sure did a lot, you see.
Right.
And, but of course I got out there with almost no dough. And so I went looking for work right away, of course. And everyone kept telling me, forget it, go back east, you won't get a job. Well, after a week of that, it was pretty discouraging. So we were all on a beach down in Kitsilano in Vancouver, and they were all running up and down and doing things. And I pulled out my writing pad, and I wrote a story about how depressed the businessmen in Vancouver were. And that's what was wrong with the economy. They were in a big slump in '70, right? They said they're never in their office, they're all so downtrodden and negative and so on. And I wrote this thing. And I took it into the newspaper, and they paid me $50 for it, right? So I was a journalist, or got started as a journalist. So a week went by, they didn't publish it, so I went back and they said, we decided not to publish it. So I went out the door with it in my hand, and there was another newspaper across the hall, the rival newspaper. So I went in and they gave me $50 for it, right? So, but they called me the next morning and said, we want you to come down here in your 3-piece herringbone suit, right, your Wallach suit, right, and we want to get a picture of you, looking for work.
You're kidding.
No, so I put on the suit and went down there and made the movie. But, yeah, they gave you a whole page, or half a page, or a page. Here I am striding out the door. I had a mustache and my briefcase and my 3-piece suit and my Dior tie and so on. And and they got quite a few answers in the press the next day and so on. And then some little woman from Vancouver sent me $50 to help tide me over till I got a job. Now we're talking like 4 times as much. That's like $200 I get for the article, and then another $200 from her. So I write to thank her, and she sends me another $200 and invites me to tea.
Wow.
So I go to see her, and she gives me tea and another $200, right? And these are $50 bills.
Wow.
But yeah, people are wonderful, right, and so on. So So it looks like I'm on my way to being a journalist, but then I go into, well, we go out to Long Beach, and it's wonderful out there. But to get there, you got to go over Vancouver Island, and you're up there, as it feels like you're as high as Switzerland at one point. And we're hitchhiking, we're in a camper, and you're looking down, and you see the coast down there. It's down 3,000 or 4,000 meters, man. I mean, you're way up there. And then we get over to the beach, and they're living under logs. You just dig out one of these huge tank car logs, grab a shovel, and you dig under that. It's perfectly safe. And you dig a cave, and now you got a place to live. And everybody's got beautiful suntans to here. Because it's like Scotland. It's the straight cold wind off the Pacific, right?
Yeah.
So everybody's happy, and no one runs around without a sweater on there. All tan, like they look like Native Americans with their red from the sun, but that's it. So we got a little cabin and stayed there. It was very nice. And but when I get back, I get an offer of a job up at Simon Fraser University. And it's strange. You get on a bus in Vancouver, it's summer, and you get off, and it's winter. You go straight up a mountain, man, for about an hour, right? You get off, you go, whoa, and there's this monolithic building, sort of inverted pyramid, standing on stilts at the top of this mountain. And that's the University of Simon Fraser. So I go in, they're very nice and very glad to see me. First, the guy takes me to the faculty lounge, only they had a student strike and they occupied the faculty lounge, and they've never left. So it's now everyone's lounge, right? Excuse me. Then he shows me this room in the basement, about half as big as this room. And there's 12 people seated in there working. And he says, and there's your seat over there, right? No window, right? It's a windowless room in the basement. And the computers are always in the basement, right? He says, there, you work right there. And they offer me something like $1,000 a week, an incredible amount of money in those days. Like $3,000 or $4,000 a week now, right? So of course I'm my own worst enemy. So I said, no way, I didn't come out to the great Northwest, you know, to be in a hole in the basement. Thanks a lot. And I left. See, and I'm down to $5 basically. And John says to me, Peter was playing a lot of pool. There's a little pool hall in Kitsilano. We were spending a lot of time playing pool. And John showed up. Then he said, can you build a cabin? I said, sure, I can build a cabin. And next thing you know, I'm over on his island building a cabin for him. But before that, Joe Reeve, the guy who'd had the place on Prince Arthur, he'd put me on to a press agent in Vancouver who had an office downtown with 2 girls running the office. And these girls were like, you know, my pals after a while. I go in, have coffee, say hello to them, bring them a flower, whatever. And I found in the newspaper an ad looking for actors, right? And I said to the girls, I'm going to get a job being an actor, you know that? They said, what do you mean? I said, look here, here's an audition. I know they're going to hire me, right? And put me in this show. So I go in, and I'm so relaxed, I'm so sure I'm going to get I'm living in a hippie house. They took me in down there. For some reason, Barb wasn't around. And I said, I'm going to get myself a job in this play. And I was so relaxed, I went in and cut-offs, you know, shorts and, you know, hadn't shaved or probably bathed in a week or whatever. I went in, I read for the part. They said, come back tomorrow and, you know, please study up a little bit on the part. I didn't study up for anything. I came in the next day and I did another reading. I was so sure I was going to get the part. And then they said to me, don't call us, we'll call you. Well, that's in the movies. That means you don't get the job, right? So I go back to my little boarding house, and John shows up and says, can you build a cabin? I said, you betcha, and off we go to build a cabin. Me and my girlfriend Barbara and John off in his little car. It's an all-day trip, and off we go for a week. And then when we get back to Vancouver the next time, the people at my house are saying, "Where were you, man? They've been looking for you for a week, 2 weeks. They want to put you in this play," right? And the play ran 6 months in Vancouver, so I'd have been a professional actor. And instead I was out on the island building a log cabin, right? So I ran over and saw the producer, and he said, yeah, we'd love to have you, but we signed someone else now. So have a good time on your island, and that was that, right? See? Negative thought, the power of negative thinking, right? I had a job and I walked out on it. So it's to get to Lasqueti from Vancouver, it's a trek, right? So
Yeah.
John picks us up in his little van. We go over to the ferry, a couple hours on the ferry, the most beautiful bay you can imagine, and snow-capped mountains in every direction. It's exquisite. It's so beautiful you don't believe it the first couple days you're out there.
Really?
You go, that must be a painted backdrop. After about a week you go, wow, that's real. It's that extraordinary. And then you get off and you drive again on the big island. There's an island about the size of Long Island stretching up the coast, and it's got mountains on it, I don't know, 10,000 feet high at least. Snow-capped peaks all year round, and everywhere else covered with trees. So it's forest city, British Columbia. And it's just beautiful out there. So John takes us. Then we have to get another ferry we drive an hour or two on the big island, get another ferry for an hour or so, and then we walk up this road for a mile, and there's blackberries on bushes on each side of the road. So as you walk up the road, you're eating blackberries from nature, right, like this, right? So we get up there in this huge house, and there's 6 couples living in the house, 12 people living there. And they have a big fireplace with a fire going and so on. And some of them are fairly nice to me, but I felt very uncomfortable. Didn't feel like I fell in and fit in. And my girlfriend had bought me a new shirt, and it was a hair shirt. It was miserable there. So the next morning I said to John, I don't like it. He had wanted me to rebuild the cabin. And I looked at the cabin and I said, the cabin's too far gone. It's going to cost you too much to rebuild it. Anyway, I don't like your friends. You see what a sweetheart I was, right? I was terrible. But John, he's such a gentleman. He said, oh, well, just so that doesn't affect our relationship. Wow, I didn't even know we had a relationship, so I said, no. And he said, well, I think it's a little too soon to make that judgment, but I'll take you back. So right away, pack up your stuff, right? Me and my girlfriend are going to drive us all the way back to Vancouver because I don't want the job. No argument, no, just so it doesn't affect our relationship. Wonderful, man. So we're on the way back. And we get, first a little ferry, then we drive, then we get on the big ferry, and we leave Barbara up in the lounge on the ferry having a coffee. He says, come on downstairs, and we go down to the car deck, and there's a thing, there's no entry. John opens it, and we go. And we're on a little balcony overlooking the ocean. And he pulls out a hash pipe, but if you look down in it, it's like looking in the boiler of a locomotive, right? He fills it up with crumbs of hash and hands it to me. So here we are on our own little private balcony, take a choke and collapse. I'm hanging there, just about ready to lose my knees from out from underneath me. And I'm looking out at the water. And this was a key moment in my life because I realized I'd just been in paradise and walked out. Right? I mean, nobody'd been really rude to me there or anything. In fact, one guy had been real nice, and just people kind of ignored me. Nobody's been rude to me or anything. And then berries dripping off fruit dripping off the trees. And I was walking away from it. And then, simultaneously, I had this insight that on the West Coast, people don't talk much. They just get to the point. They don't go blah, 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 blah. They go, here's the point, right? So I started to make a big speech, and I realized that. So I just said, I didn't have much breath left after this choke on the pipe. I said, John, can I go back? Get to the point, right? Didn't explain a thing. And this was a key moment because he said, oh, I wouldn't want to go through that again. I says, no, you won't go through it again. And then, talk about elegance, tact, right? Then he says, John is such a gentleman, he says, well, you know, that's such an important decision, Shayne. I think you're the one who has to make it. Not, okay, I'll let you go back, right? I mean, just elegance total, right? So we get in the car, turn around, pay another. He's paying for all these ferries and everything. Turn around, go back, and I spent the next 7 months there on Lasqueti Island. And what a place! I mean, it was like in a movie. You get off. There was no electricity, so at night you just had hurricane lamps, you know, kerosene lamps and fireplaces. That's all. And all the guys were in jeans, and the women were all in big skirts. You know, for some reason the only time I ever saw the women in jeans was when they had a wedding, and everyone came over from Vancouver. Then the girls put on their jeans to look real hip and with it, right? But when they left, they were back to their, you know, their granny outfits. So you could have been in an 1890s movies, you know. Well, what'd you do today, Dennis? Oh, we went and saw the Darwins, you know, and then we drove around looking for deer, and it was like going back in history, you understand. And my girlfriend and I lived out in the orchard because they had no room in the house for us, the 6 couples. So we had John's tent out in the orchard, and it was nothing wrong with that, you know. Beautiful weather. It was right in the middle of the summer. And everyone ran around half naked because we'd hit a lake. We had a pickup truck. We hit a lake, and everybody just strip off and jump in. Nobody thought to bring a swimsuit to Lasqueti like me. And, you know, so no, there were no swimsuits. No one even thought of them, right? So you saw a lot of naked people on Lasqueti. So that was nice. And all the wives, all our girlfriends, they were all young, beautiful women in their early 20s. You know. So you had 6 beautiful naked women running around. If everyone took a shower in the yard, there was just a tube coming down out in the yard. And you'd see these beautiful women having their shower stark naked every day. It was one of the joys of life on Lasqueti was being naked, right? Not just women either. I was there recently, and Merrick was cleaning off John's tractor. He'd just take his clothes off first. Why get your clothes dirty, right? You know, and if a car came by, hey, how you doing? It's like that on this island, right? So, and it's just the idea of living without electricity. The only hardship without electricity basically was the washing, because it took up muscle work. And the girls had an old kind of lever washing machine. They had this kind of thing. 2 girls get on this lever, and they could kind of move it around a little bit. They have to do that for a half hour. That was real hard work and so on. They had to do it. That's all we had. But everything else you could do with a generator or with a power saw or whatever. And the deer. I bumped into a deer in the orchard one night in the dark, right? And he'd froze, and I was walking, and when I bumped into him, he jumped, and I heard his muscles snap like bowstring. Right? Bong! And then, boom, 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 you know. He must have jumped 30, 40 feet. So it was just wonderful living out there in the orchard and working on this cabin. And the cabin was totally just like this. Everything had fallen down, see. And Ed Darwin, the kind of old man of the island, he said, what kind of sills you got on that cabin? I didn't even know what a sill was, you know. I know the usual kind, you know. I didn't know shit about cabins. But I just built a house. I'd been in a kind of ashram or a religious community where they shared everything in Woodstock, New York. And I'd helped a carpenter build a 2-story nursery, so I knew how to handle a hammer and a saw, do all that. So I just measure, this was a stand-up log kind of cabin, right? Palisade. So I take one log at a time and I tell the boys, grown-up boys, all right, I need to have a log, 7.2 inches long and this fat. And off they go into the woods and come back with just the log I needed in time for lunch. Now we drink some blackberry wine and smoke a J or whatever and go back to work. It was like living 100 years ago, or go hunting or go fishing. And the water's there. We weren't on the water, most people were, but we were up on the crest of the hill. And we had a boat down there, but we didn't go out often. But when we did, a couple of girls, a couple of guys would go out. They come back with 150 pounds of salmon, Cousteau said it was one of the last 3 natural places on Earth, right? You get 4 or 5, 30, 40-pound salmon in an hour. We didn't even know how to fish. They'd just about jump in the boat to help you out. And I said to Merrick, are there this many oysters around the other Gulf Islands? And he said, well, I think this is the only one where you have to climb over the oysters to get to your boat. And they were so big you had to cut them in half to eat them. I guess they looked like shoes, It was a real paradise and so on, right? And there were 60 people on the whole island. It was an island the size and shape of Manhattan. 60 people living on board, right? It was just an extraordinary place to live. And things happened. Everybody knew everybody. There were romances and things like that. But the characters living on you can imagine people who choose to live on an island without electricity, right? And they wanted to put electricity in recently, the state of British Columbia, and they all refused and voted against it. We got generators, fuck off, right? Can you imagine that? We got panels. We don't want you people here.
Right.
Oh, just an extraordinary place, right? And it's just like, I'm so lucky, Dan. I've lived in such extraordinary places in my life, like Lasqueti. And we had a guy who'd come over from Texarkana Island, a huge island next door. Nobody living on it except him, I think. And he'd have tomatoes this big and cantaloupe this big and courgette this big. He had a technique. He'd put a starfish under each seed. Dig a hole, put a starfish, put a seed, and plant real late. June 1, I think, you plant. And Jesus, he'd come over and show off. He'd always have his little runabout full of them. He was a Ripley kind of guy. You could have got his stuff in Ripley every week, right? And then there was a guy named Earl, get this. All he had in the world was a 15-foot aluminum boat and a motor. So he just spent his time going around the shores of all the Gulf Islands on his little 15-footer. And every now and then he'd find a big log that belonged to nobody that got away from them, right? And these, again, are big as around as tank cars, and they're like 100, 150 feet long. I mean, half a football field. There's enough wood in there for 6 or 7 ranch houses, okay? They're probably worth $10,000. And with his little 15-horsepower motor, he takes it home, right? Then he gets another one, then he gets another one, then he gets another one. So he's got a little dock, and he's got this raft, which is about the size of a small aircraft carrier. No, I'm exaggerating it. The size of a big PT boat, if you wish. But it's huge, man. Huge raft. And on the raft, he's got a platform made from all the boards he picked up, right? And on the platform, guess what he's got to live in? A pup tent, right? He's been in a pup tent on this thing for 15 or 20 years up there. Can you imagine? All right. And someday he's going to call up the mill, and he's going to sell the thing and get 50 grand or 100 grand or something like that for it. Right?
All that wood, huh?
Yeah.